Noon.
This lunchtime, the Stansted hijack is over. All the hostages have walked free. Hello, it's 12 noon, I'm Rob Butler. The four-day hijack crisis at Stansted came to a peaceful end in the early hours of the morning. Also in the programme, the Bank of England makes its decision on a rise in the cost of borrowing. And Leonardo's back, how Di Caprio took the West End by storm. The Stansted hijack crisis is over. It ended peacefully in the early hours of the morning with the release of all the hostages aboard the Afghan airliner. They left the plane in two separate groups at around 3 a.m. and then 6 a.m. Home Office sources have indicated that so far around 60 of the passengers have claimed asylum. 19 people are under arrest. 5's Bernardo reports from the airport.
The beginning of the end of Britain's longest ever hijack drama. The night vision camera shows armed police move towards two hijackers at the base of the aircraft steps at just after 3 a.m. this morning. This is the moment of surrender. Within minutes, the first group of women and children hostages step clear of the Ariana Air Boeing 727 that has been their home for 4 days. It took nearly 3 hours for all the passengers to be freed, and then, just before dawn, the last of the hijackers walked from the jet, their arms raised, and the police declared, "This hijack is over."
Within the last few minutes, we brought the last people off the hijacked Afghan aeroplane. Just now we're checking to make sure that the plane truly is empty, but I believe that the hijack is now at an end.
But while hours of delicate negotiations appear to have paid off, there is still much to do in dealing with those many now seeking asylum. After an ordeal lasting nearly 100 hours, the hostages face further delay as they are slowly processed into this country before being brought to a reception centre at this hotel near Stansted Airport. Off the plane, these people are strangers in a strange land. It's still unclear how many of them now wish to seek asylum and stay in Britain, and how many wish to return to Afghanistan. At least 40 of those on board are thought to be related to the hijackers. There are suggestions that weapons were smuggled on board by wives or mothers. For the police now carrying out a criminal investigation, in many cases the distinction between hostage and hijacker will be unclear.
So the ordeal ends for the passengers on board the Afghan plane. Vice Fernando is still at Stansted with the latest news. And we saw some of the hostages there. What do we know of their condition, their health, their well-being?
Well, Rob, I think the simple fact that they all walked from the aeroplane shows us that they weren't that badly hurt. There were no stretchers, and one person who suffered from asthma was released by the hijackers a couple of days ago. The police say there were some cuts and some grazes, slight physical wounds. Of course, the mental wounds may be far deeper.
Ben, the police have obviously been talking to journalists quite a lot this morning. What's the latest word from them?
Right, well, Rob, there were 19 arrests, or there have been 19 arrests, and so far there have been a large number of applications for asylum, and they're still happening. The number at the moment, we gather, is 60. That will probably be increasing. There are also a large number of weapons seized from the jet, and I can tell you what they are. There were 4 handguns, 5 knives, 2 detonators, and 2 grenades without fuses, as well as 1 knuckle duster. And one senior officer said that clearly illustrates that there was a far greater potential for this to have a far more serious outcome.
I can certainly categorically state that when you find 5 knives, 4 handguns, 1 knuckle duster, 2 detonators and 2 grenades without fuses, in my view that's a hijacking.
Ben, do we know yet who the hijackers were and what's going to happen to them now?
No, we don't, Rob, actually. Let's say 19 arrests. There were suggestions that 40 of the same family were on board, some of them hijackers, some of them family members, and that those weapons could have been smuggled aboard by women. And we don't yet know how many of those on board the jet, innocent hostages or family of the hijackers, will be seeking asylum, and what the procedure is now for that.
Ben, as you've said, there have been already a lot of people who are seeking asylum. Any more idea yet from the police about that was really the whole purpose of this hijacking?
Well, I think that's been the thought for a few days here, that this was simply an elaborate way of obtaining political asylum. However, when you look at the sheer number of weapons that were seized from that jet, there was obviously the potential for a far more serious and violent outcome than that which eventually they got here this morning in the early hours.
Thanks very much, Ben. In the last few moments, the Bank of England's Monetary Committee has raised interest rates by 0.25%, from 5.75% to 6%. That is the third rate rise in just 4 months. I'm joined now by Julian Buck from Barclays Stockbrokers. Julian, thanks for your time. Why have they put up rates?
I think this is ahead of the potential threat of inflation. What we have seen recently is a house price survey, which is one of the specific drivers of inflation, stating that house prices are rising at the fastest rate since 1989. Now that is actually a potential threat to inflation. The Monetary Policy Committee have to ward off the inflation threat. That is their agenda. That is why the rates have gone up for the 4th time. They actually had 4 drops since the beginning of 1999 and now 4 increases. So we're back to where we started at the beginning of last year.
House prices aren't going up everywhere in the country, though. Wouldn't it be better for the government to try to act to dampen down that cause rather than make everybody pay?
That is most certainly a possibility, and I think the lobby from the manufacturing industry is worth listening to. There's a couple of points there. Number one, that manufacturing seems to be doing slightly better in the last quarter of 1999. And the second issue is that the manufacturing industry are lobbying most strongly to say that house prices are going up and manufacturing are effectively paying for this. So why not actually increase the stamp duty on house prices and housing purchases, which is actually a fairer way of distributing this. Now, their budget is next month on March the 21st, so expect to see some moves in that direction.
Julian, businesses are already saying that this is a rate rise that they don't want. There have been reports today that the electrical firm Sony's warned the government it won't put any more money or any more jobs here because interest rates are high, making the pound high. Will the Bank of England listen to any of these things?
I think the Bank of England has to listen. The Monetary Policy Committee, though, as I've just mentioned, is driven by its main agenda, which is, of course, inflation. We are expecting interest rates to peak at perhaps one more rise between 6.25 and 6.5%. So I think we are at the end of the road, or nearly the end of the road. And the other issue is that when interest rates rise, the actual effect on inflation takes between 8 to 9 months to actually percolate through. So we have to actually expect that this particular reduction in inflation below the 2.5% benchmark to take quite some time to come through.
Julian Buck, thank you very much. More stories making the headlines now. The retail tycoon Philip Green has abandoned plans to launch a takeover bid for the troubled high street chain Marks & Spencer. He says he's pulling out because of recent controversies surrounding his plan to bid, including reports that his wife bought shares in M&S. But he said he might change his mind again and make an offer if someone else bids for the firm. Gas bills are about to be cut. The energy watchdog Ofgem has announced price cuts of up to £10 a year for British gas customers. The new price controls come into effect from the 1st of April, but won't apply to customers who pay by direct debit, as they already get a discount. The long-awaited report into the NHS crisis says that 4,000 more beds are needed to cope with demand. The severe shortage of beds was highlighted during the recent flu outbreak, when some patients were ferried about the country in search of a space in intensive care. The first Nazi war criminal convicted in this country has failed to overturn his life sentence for murdering Jews in Belarus. Anthony Savonier claims that his Old Bailey trial last April was an abuse of the process of the court. Simon Viger is at the Court of Appeal for us this lunchtime. Simon, what happened there this morning?
Well, as you say, Anthony Savonier, 78 years old, the first man convicted of Nazi war crimes in this country, and he had his appeal thrown out by 3 senior appeal judges here this morning, including the Lord Chief Justice. He said that his convictions were unsafe and unsound, but the judges ruled that out of question. They said it doesn't matter that there's a near 60-year gap between what he is accused and convicted of doing when he was a young policeman in Belarus and the actual trial coming to court here. They said the convictions are sound because eyewitnesses who saw him operating under Nazi control all those years ago came to court, and the judge and jury, in an unprecedented move, were actually flown out to Belarus to see the sites of the crimes. So the convictions stand, he remains a prisoner.
Just remind us, Simon, a little bit of what more we know about this man.
Well, Anthony Savoniuk was a British rail ticket collector when he came to the UK and maintains his innocence, I have to say. He says he's a poor old man who's done nothing wrong, but a very different story from eyewitnesses, including a man who was 13 when he saw one of the murders take place. Savoniuk was a policeman, a young policeman, working under Nazi control in Belarus, which is part of the former Soviet Union, and there were clear eyewitnesses to the crimes that he took under Nazi auspices.
Thanks very much indeed, Simon. Leo Mania struck the West End of London last night. Thousands of screaming fans turned out to greet Leonardo Di Caprio for the premiere of his latest movie, The Beach. Leo himself seemed perhaps a little ungrateful. He said the crowds were weird, and he just went through the motions by posing for the cameras. Catherine Jones reports.
They'd had to stand for hours in the cold. They'd brought posters, valentines, even knickers to throw, and they chanted themselves absolutely hoarse. But finally, for a few short seconds, all the waiting was worthwhile. Although he's rated the world's biggest heartthrob, it seems poor Leonardo all found it a bit too much though, and couldn't wait to get safely inside for the European premiere of his new movie.
It's weird, I just sort of go through the motions of the whole thing. I don't really have a... I just sort of go there and pose for the pictures and try my best. It's all you can do, because it's almost like not you at a certain point, you know what I mean? It becomes its own entity in a lot of ways.
Virginie Ledoyen is DiCaprio's co-star in The Beach, a twisted tale of a utopian island community that goes horribly wrong once the pair arrive. The French actress has the tough task of having to kiss Leo, but last night she admitted she couldn't remember much about it.
I knew he was a great actor and I was very excited working with him, but I wasn't like in love with him, that's what you mean.
Although that's something no one outside could quite believe.
It's just wonderful. It's perfect. He's got unique looks and you just can't take that away from him.
Last night, ogling Leo on screen was strictly for select celebrities like Zoe Ball and the All Saints, but The Beach opens for all of us to see tomorrow night. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
And we'll tell you what it's like with our movie reviewer tomorrow in 5 News at noon. Right now, though, we're going to take a short break. But plenty more stories still to come today as we return live to Stansted for the latest developments after the peaceful end to the hijack crisis. And is time running out for John Barnes, Celtic boss's meet to decide his fate? We'll have all the day's sports news, and Rob will be here with the weather prospects. Stay with us.